We've got our third United States Supreme Court justice who's using an interview or a speech in the last week or so to publicly condemn or rebuke Donald Trump. It is extraordinary. The reason I've never done a hot take like this before is it's never happened before. We don't have Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Justice Sotomayor all effectively joining together in a chorus against the Trump administration. We've had a series of events in the last 2 weeks where the Supreme Court, trying to find its footing as it itself circles the drain of history, as itself battles an existential battle for the soul of America being played out among 9 justices. And now at least 3 of them have decided to step forward and flex a little muscle against Donald Trump. I reported on Chief Justice Roberts. I reported on Ketanji Brown Jackson. I'm going to report now on, once again, one of the moral centers of the Supreme Court, Sonia Sotomayor. And I think it is perfect justice, poetic justice and perfect justice that she gave her speech in her interview at the American Bar Association in the African American Museum in Washington. And why? Because Donald Trump has gone after the ABA. He sees it as a leftist, activist, political, weaponized bar association. I got to tell you, I've been a member of the American Bar Association for the last 35 years. I get their magazine now electronically. It would be perfect in a dentist office or while you're waiting for an oil change. It is about as dry and boring and apolitical as possible. The ABA rarely takes a stand, except when it comes to ranking and rating judges. And that's why Donald Trump doesn't like the American Bar Association. I'm going to tell you more about these 3 judges all coming together in the last 2 weeks, including Sotomayor in the last 24 hours, the only place I know where I can do it. It's the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. You're on Legal AF. I'm Michael Popok. Take a moment and hit the subscribe button, and you'll get more content like this from more people at the intersection of law and politics. Extraordinary 2 weeks. I wanted to put it in historical context because sometimes we lose that. While we're building the plane, while we're flying it, and because of Trump fatigue and the velocity at which these things move, sometimes we lose where we are from a historical perspective. I will tell you that at no time in the last 50 years or in the last 75 years have 3 separate Supreme Court justices within a week of each other all try to do a direct contact to the American people and the leader of the executive branch at the same time on different angles. Never. Especially during the term. I mean, they all go off on vacations over the summer. They all teach or seminars. They're put up in Swiss chalets or on Lake Como, usually the Republicans, paid for by Federalist supporters. But they don't talk out about pending matters. But Sonia Sotomayor just told lawyers and law students, if you don't want to be in the fight business, if you don't want to stand up, you picked the wrong profession, because you must fight this fight. You must stand up now, in her words. I'm going to tell you about her words. I don't have a clip because there wasn't a clip for the American Bar Association, but I will show you a clip of a recent, just in the last month, interview she gave about the rule of law, which was also a direct rebuke of Donald Trump. Let's start with Sotomayor. Let's talk about John Roberts. We'll do it in reverse chronological order, and then Ketanji Brown Jackson, who kicked it off on May 1st. And I'll show you these clips. Let's get back to Sonia Sotomayor. She was addressing hundreds of lawyers at the American Bar Association, which I've told you Donald Trump hates and wants to put under his greasy thumb. She said, based on reports in the room, that our job as lawyers is to stand up for people who can't do it themselves. Right now, we can't lose the battles we are facing. I am sure she's also, like another great jurist, Beryl Howell on the D.C. Court of Appeals, who 2 weeks ago wrote about the law firms that were capitulating to Donald Trump, that were bending the knee. She said, shame on you. If you got an issue, if you're being attacked, if the Justice Department or the Trump administration is going after you in a vindictive way and violating your First Amendment rights or your rights to practice your profession as a lawyer, come to federal judges. And Sotomayor picks up with that. She says, in general terms, although she never mentioned Trump, just like Roberts never mentions Trump and Ketanji Brown Jackson doesn't mention Trump, but you know they're talking about Trump. And she worked at all of the firms. She worked as a summer associate in some of the major firms that just bent the knee. So did I. One of my firms did it and gave $100 million in tribute and extortion to Donald Trump. She told the group assembled during the ABA in the last 24 hours, we need trained and passionate and committed lawyers to fight this fight. For me, being here with you is an act of solidarity. Very similar to language Ketanji Brown Jackson used in Puerto Rico when she was addressing a group of lawyers and judges and others. She also said in a critique of the Trump administration about diversity, equity, and inclusion, she said it this way: diversity is important for its own sake because it inspires everyone to believe that it is possible for them to be in a position to help others. She goes on to say, as she was selected, that we are not trying to be activist judges, Sotomayor said. We're just trying to uphold the Constitution. Trump, of course, complains about all these things. You see him in a social media post whining that of the checks and balance that are being provided in the separation of powers by the judiciary. Trump lashes out at things like Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Our court system is not letting me do my job as elected to do. Activist judges must let the Trump administration deport murderers and other criminals without delay. No. Due process. Notice. A federal judge overseeing it all is our bedrock of our constitutional republic. Let's move to Robert. Well, let me show you a clip, since I can't give you a clip from the ABA because it doesn't exist, the speech by Justice Sotomayor. She did have a very telling, direct rebuke of Donald Trump about the importance of the rule of law in a recent interview just in the last 30 days. Let's roll that clip.
So let's talk about what the rule of law is. It's a wonderful term, isn't it? And when you shared the first question with me, I went to the dictionary. Believe it or not, I still do simple things. And I went to Black's Law Dictionary, great source. And the definition was the restriction of the arbitrary exercise of power by subordinating it to well-defined and established laws. That's the rule of law. And the concept is really more generalized. You can speak about it. It's a principle under which all persons, institutions, and entities are accountable to laws that are publicly promulgated and equally enforced. Okay? Technical definition.
Okay, that was a day ago, 3 days ago. Chief Justice Roberts, all gussied up in a suit with a tie, being interviewed in very hushed tones in some solemn place. I'm not even sure where it was, on some stage. Was asked by the moderator about attacks on the judiciary and the independence of the judiciary. And again, in a criticism of Donald Trump, although about as mild, but that's Roberts, about as mild as he could have come up with. Sometimes the federal courts need to restrain the excesses of the other two branches. Sometimes we're watching it. Chief Justice Roberts is responsible for letting the genie out of the lamp, Pandora out of the box, Frankenstein out of the cage in the lab. He created Donald Trump. He wrote the immunity decision, giving him criminal immunity for basically anything that he does. And it got into Donald Trump's psychosis, his head. And it's the reason we have an out-of-control rogue president. He wrote the Colorado decision that if he had gone the other way, would have kept Donald Trump off the ballot as an insurrectionist. He's to blame. But again, he's done a couple of things in the last month or two to try to hem in Donald Trump, put more guardrails up. He led a standing ovations. Literally, all 9 justices stood up against Donald Trump when one of the Department of the Solicitor General's office resigned after 46 years. And you can guess why. In the last 2 weeks, Edwin Kneedler, after 160 oral arguments at the Supreme Court, he could not abide by the Trump administration any longer. And John Roberts led a applause, standing ovation, not just for Kneedler, but to show Donald Trump that the rule of law matters. And the same John Roberts sent out a direct statement, which is referenced in the interview I'm going to show you next, where he told Donald Trump, stop calling for the impeachment of federal judges. Appeal, that's what the Supreme Court is for, not impeachment calls. Let's roll the clip of Roberts in the last 48 hours.
I think most judges would agree that judicial independence is crucial. You agree? What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's central. The only real political science innovation in our Constitution, I mean, parliaments have been around for 800 years, and obviously executives, is the establishment of an independent judiciary. Even places you think are similar to ours, like England, the judiciary in England was part of Parliament. I mean, they sat in the House of Lords, and because Parliament was supreme. But in our Constitution, judges and the judiciary is a co-equal branch of government, separate from the others, with the authority to interpret the Constitution as law, and strike down, obviously, acts of Congress or acts of the president. And that innovation doesn't work if it's not, the judiciary is not independent. Its job is to obviously decide cases, but in the course of that, check the excesses of Congress or of the executive, and that does require a degree of independence.
What do you think of these calls for impeachment of judges based on the decisions that they've made?
Well, I've already spoken to that, and
Yeah.
Impeachment is not how you register disagreement with decisions.
That's what you're for, right? That's what you're there for.
That's what we're there for.
Yeah.
Let's continue with our contextual analysis of this extraordinary coming together of 3 justices in 3 different settings, all in the last less than 30 days, all coming up and coming out against Donald Trump. Ketanji Brown Jackson. Write it down, put it in a time capsule. Popok's telling you that if the Democrats get control of the White House, which they will in 2028 with our help, Ketanji Brown Jackson's going to be your next Chief Justice. Ketanji Brown Jackson, if she's not the brightest person on that panel, I don't know who is. She's certainly in the top 2. And she, addressing a room full of lawyers and judges and courtroom staff and others at the First Circuit Conference in Puerto Rico. That's where it was held. She reportedly, we know from people in the room, said that she was going to take a moment on May Day, May 1, which is the rule of law day, the law day in America, as a point of personal preference. She was going to step out and defend the judges and lawyers who were under attack in America. That was the road to tyranny, that would undermine our freedoms and our democracy and our justice system. And it must stop. And she said, she didn't mention Trump by name, but she literally said, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I don't think she was just referring to the GOP symbol. And then she went into a defense of why judicial independence, much like Roberts, is so important to our democracy. Having an independent lawyers, members of the bar who are not afraid, don't have their voices chilled, aren't looking over their shoulder because an administration is up their ass and threatening to put them in jail or take away their livelihood. They can't do the zealous representation that's required by my profession's code of conduct and ethics if they're looking over their shoulder from the Trump administration. Alexander de Tocqueville, when he was traveling around America in the 1830s, observing America, said one of the major firewalls to prevent excesses in the democracy was a free and independent bar, lawyers, judges as well. And that's Ketanji Brown Jackson. So we know who Ketanji Brown Jackson, Roberts, and Sotomayor are talking about. They didn't just pick May to talk about these things, May of 2025, comment on rule of law month. They didn't just lead a standing ovation that wasn't a pointed criticism of Donald Trump. But what are they going to do about it when it comes to decision making and rulemaking from the bench on the Supreme Court? They got one more oral argument coming up this Thursday. We're going to be covering it live on Legal AF. It's going to be probably at 10 a.m. We'll have a live feed there. We'll do commentary in and out of it. It's on birthright citizenship, whether Donald Trump, through an executive order, can rip birthright citizenship out of the 14th Amendment, yes or no, and whether courts have the ability to be independent and fashion remedies like nationwide injunctions from their perch of a single courthouse, yes or no. What say you? It's easy to give speeches and interviews, but you got to stand up for the rule of law in the courtroom. And that's what we demand and expect here on Legal AF. You're on Legal AF. You're at the intersection of law and politics. I'm Michael Popok. I do about 40 videos a week at that intersection, and I'm joined by another dozen contributors here on the Legal AF YouTube channel. Take a minute, hit the subscribe button, come on over to Legal AF, the Substack. We got the podcast, top 13 in the world, called Legal AF. Made it easy for you. Everything's got AF in it. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.